Welcome to Hello Church. This is season 3, episode 6, and we're talking about welcoming first-time guests into your service. It's going to be a great episode, short, sweet, and I think you're going to walk away with a couple of tips or ideas to make guests feel more comfortable in your service.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about before a guest gets on your campus, what to do, some tips there. Before a guest walks through the door, once they are in the doors, the sermon. I think you can find today very practical, very simple, but there'll be one or two things that I believe that you'll be able to implement at your church, and that will only increase the guest experience.
Yeah. Have you ever visited a church where it was just kind of awkward because you'd never been there before? And I know it's happened to me, and I've shared that before, whether it's trying to check in kids or trying to figure out where the service is, or walking in a door. And this is my biggest fear, walking in a door that looks like it could be a side door or also an entrance, and worry that you're going to walk out on stage. I dream about that. That's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Has it ever happened to you?
I visited a small church one time, and the lady, when we walked through the door, was like, "Oh, great, we have some kids today, finally in the nursery."
She's like, after the incident, it's been a while.
It's been a while. They got some fresh blood. And that wasn't really awkward. It was just a random comment, right? I was like, oh, I guess they don't have a lot of kids come through here.
There you go. I think sometimes, and it's happened to me, small churches, medium churches, bigger churches just have not really felt welcome or at home, and so that's really not what you want. There are going to be people who are going to feel uncomfortable in new environments regardless, but hopefully they're not going to feel uncomfortable because of something that we are doing wrong. So we'll discuss that, and hopefully as new guests come into your congregation, you'll feel like, I've got some tips. Hopefully I can make people feel a little more welcome.
Yeah, so we have a few different sections of the episode today, and the question is, we'll start with this first section. What do you do before a new guest comes on campus? And I'd like to take a moment to introduce a new podcast that we've created with Dave Shrine. He's a co-host, and I'm the other co-host, and it's called the Front Door Church Podcast. And really, this podcast is all about digital evangelism, equipping you to reach people before they ever attend a service in person at your church. Because we know the world has changed a lot in the past few years, and there's a lot of churches that are utilizing streaming, your services, but that's just one of the many dozens of things that you can do to really reach people digitally. And so this podcast is really going to help you sort of dig deep into some of those tools and practices for your digital evangelism ministry. And you'd be surprised how simple some of the things that you can do to reach people. And so let's start there with this section. So what do we do before a new guest comes on campus? I think one of the first things that we do is we make sure that our website and all of our social media platforms has all up-to-date information. I actually was trying to submit an order yesterday online. I collect sports cards, and I get them graded, and it's a fun thing. It's a hobby of mine. And the website, I needed some support. I need some help. And I kept looking. They didn't have a phone number, so I kept looking for some way to contact them. And I found 3 different email addresses while I was trying to get help for this issue. And to be honest, it's confusing. I was sort of new to their site. And so you make sure your website has all up-to-date information. Make sure all your social media handles are correct. Make sure the directions, the service times. It's amazing. Sometimes we sort of set it and forget it. And then stuff changes, and we forget to go back and update the website. We forget to go and update the links on our social media profiles. So just make sure, because especially if they haven't attended your service yet and they're on your website, they're looking around, you want to make sure that you have up-to-date information, because again, it could be confusing to them if it's not. And
I think more churches are doing this, but maybe having some sort of menu option at the top. It's visiting for the first time or visiting us, and you can kind of lay out the details. Hey, here's where to park. Here's what time it starts. Here's our dress code. Because if you've not been to church in a while, it's kind of like, whenever I was a kid, I had to wear a suit and tie. Maybe having that, And even just saying like childcare is provided, just little things that we take for granted might be really important for people who are visiting for the first time. So I think that's really important, and doing that on social media too. It's weird because at our church, we go to the same church, and I've met a number of people who have told me, hey, I actually found out about your church because of social media. Maybe someone shared it, or it was just an ad was out there. So think through that strategy. Think through how you're communicating with people on social media. And two, Front Door can really help you do that. It's great. I'm also starting a podcast called Side Door Church. It's when you walk in the side door and end up on the stage during the sermon.
Oh,
it's scary.
That sounds amazing.
But yeah, check out Front Door. Front Door is really great. It's a company that's a part of Ministry Pass, and it's your digital front door for your church.
Yeah. The next question that we have is, what do you do before a guest walks through the door? What are the things that we need to do? I think
they're like pulling into the parking lot.
Yeah, they're on campus.
They're crossing the threshold.
Right.
So what's the first thing that they should see when they cross that threshold?
Man, well, I think first of all, signage is important. You got to put yourself in their shoes. They don't know where to go, right?
Yeah.
They don't know where to go. They're sort of, you might have the guest parking spots, but they don't know how to get to those parking spots.
Or they might not even know they're there. They might think, that's like a handicap parking spot or something like that.
Exactly. So put yourself in their shoes. I think it's a good practice to even get in a vehicle, drive onto your campus, and put yourself in a guest's shoes and say, okay, what if I'm a guest? What am I seeing first?
Yeah.
What am I noticing? What do I have questions about? Am I confused about the layout of the parking lot? Is there certain signage that we can add that would add clarity to their first experience on campus?
Yeah, and it is, I would say it's even more confusing if you are meeting in a place that's not an actual church building. So like I've gone to visit churches that meet at schools, and that's pretty confusing because you have like the main entrance.
Gosh.
And in
school has like 37 doors.
Yes, and like the main entrance might be the place, but also if you're meeting in the gym or somewhere else, you don't go through the main entrance. So just be pretty clear on where you can park, and even possibly having, if it's really tight. So like at our church where we're meeting right now, it's really tight. And so we have individuals who are just kind of directing traffic, and that's really important. If you have a lot of space, maybe you don't need that.
Yeah.
Maybe just signage. But if it's tight, you got to have people in saying like, here's where you need to go to stop traffic jams from happening.
Yeah, if you could have a parking team, you could also install a greeters team as well. I've seen some churches utilize a greeting team. So the parking guys are sort of giving directions. Once you get out of your car, you have some smiley, warm faces greeting you before you get to the actual church doors. I've even seen churches utilize what they call a wagon team. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you're a family with young kids, and let's say you got a backpack and you don't want to break out the double stroller, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a semi.
Yeah.
Rolling through the parking lot with the kids in the backpacks. Well, they had a wagon team, and so the kids could hop in the wagons, and they actually thought it was really fun, right?
That's really cool. And if you have a clown or a mime ministry at your church, they can be out there, and they could be like directing everything and like entertaining the kids. The possibilities are really endless.
They really are.
So make sure you think through like what happens to guests when they walk through that door. And then the third question is, once they are entering the front door, what comes next? You need to have really good signs where for places, whether it's youth ministry, children's ministry. And here's the thing too, I would say be really clear, and this might take some overhaul in your church, but be cognizant of what you name things, right? So if the nursery is called the Lamb's Room, I might not know what that is if I've not been to church.
Right.
I was in some sort of it was like a webinar about church stuff, and they were like, man, do you remember in like the 2000s when youth group names, they all just sounded dangerous? It was like extreme, explosion,
everything
youth.
was fire.
Fire, and you're just like, hey, we're over here at Explosion Youth. Come on, take your kids to Explosion. So
Crucified with Christ Youth.
I had a friend who went to a youth group, and it was called KG. Kids
Like-
energized for God.
Oh, man.
Keg, and they would have keg parties.
Oh man,
BYOB, bring your own Bible.
man, there it is.
Or one
Someone
will be
had-
provided to
They
you.
provided like sweet tea and a keg. Sweet tea keg
So
stand.
signs, have clear signs so they know the lamb's room
Yeah.
is not where lambs are slaughtered, but where babies are cherished.
Yep, there it is. Clear signage to the restrooms, right? If they're new, they don't know where the restrooms are.
Yeah.
Mother's retreat. I don't know if you call it a nursing room or a mother's retreat or mother's room.
Yeah.
There's all different kinds of
Yeah.
names for it, right?
Yeah.
Make sure that has clear
That's
signage
clear.
because we were at a school for a long time, and I can't tell you how many times a young mother would come out with a newborn, and she's new to the church, and she's just walking half the high school looking for the mother's room, right? And so it's important they have clear signage, and we think it's clear, but again, I think it's a good exercise. Walk through the front doors of your church and say, I'm a guest. Is the signage clear? Do I know where to go? Do I know where the auditorium is? Do I know where the kids check-in is? I think it's important because we take so many things for granted because we already know it.
And I'll say this too with greeters. Have enough greeters to where they are not chained to the door. So if you only have one or two people and all they can really do is open and close the door, if someone says, hey, where can I drop the kids off? They can't leave their post. But if you have 3 people for a door, you can say, oh yeah, I'd be happy to show you. Come on, let's go. It's right over here. It just gives your people more options to be able to help out.
And I think it is important, if volunteers can do handoffs. If you have enough volunteers to be able to walk them to the children's area or walk them to the youth area or the nursery, that's going to be helpful for them. What do you do during the sermon? Or is there like speakers on stage, pre-sermon or during the sermon?
Yeah. We're going to actually talk about this in the next episode. We're going to be talking about your service and how to communicate to people who are unchurched.
Yeah.
But I think for the sermon and for everything during service, just be kind of clear about it all. There are going to be people who've never been to church before, and they come into a service and you're singing, and they're just not going to feel comfortable. It is what it is.
Yep.
But as I mentioned earlier, we don't want them to feel unnecessarily uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So find an opportunity to just kind of explain, say, hey, you're here, and you might see people raise their hands. This is why they're doing that. Or we're going to sing, hey, we're going to begin the service. We're going to sing 3 songs. One of the reasons we do that is because it's important to sing praises to God. We learn that in the Psalms. Just kind of explaining the process, I think, could be huge for people because they really don't know if they're a guest and they haven't been to church, they don't know what to expect. And if they've gone to a different church with different habits, they might not be used to what you're doing during your service. So I think just being very clear about all that, and especially during your sermon, that's just so important.
I think it's also important to provide them an outlet to connect with you further. Without having to give you like their tax returns on a connection card, right?
Their social security number, yes.
It's like name your children, all of their ages,
date of birth, all that.
Are they allergic to anything?
Yeah.
Like the amount of hoops that we make guests go through is quite impressive to me, right? I've been sat in some churches and they give me the connection card. I'm like, holy moly, like, you know everything, they know more than the government about me.
Yeah, and then it'll ask like, "Are you a Christian?" And it's like, "Yes, no." Thinking about it, it's just some of that stuff is best done in person, not with a card that's a foot long.
Maybe what you could do is you could offer them a gift at the Connection Center, or maybe it's something like, for example, you put together a video and say, hey, if you're a guest with us and you want to know more about the church, and we're not able to get in depth about that every week to tell the story of our church, but you want to know more about the church, we have a short video or a PDF that we created with some photos and a timeline. We love to send that to you. You can go to our website and click this button or whatever the case may be. That may be a great first step, right? Then you can follow up with them after that once they give you their email address or they text in, text history to this website, and they'll send you, the church video, whatever the case may be. Then you can follow up with them.
Yeah. Question, sidebar.
Okay.
What is the ideal gift to give to a new person.
Man.
So I always joke about the coffee cup, right?
Man.
I actually realize I don't have any coffee cups from other churches at this point, and I don't know, maybe I did, or maybe
It's because you stopped church hopping.
or it stopped. Yeah, there you go. Well, or maybe I just didn't get it. I was just like, I don't need a coffee cup. What's the ideal present? I'm kind of thinking it through. Part of me thinks it's just a good old fashioned candy bar. Because you've gone to church, you've gotten up with your kids, you just get in the car and you got a Kit Kat. I don't know.
How about a solid cup of coffee?
Yeah, that's when you come in. That's another thing. Good cups of coffee.
Yeah,
with creamer.
If they're a guest,
creamer.
if they're a guest, they don't get the styrofoam cup.
Don't be stingy.
They get the mug, right?
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, with like a lid.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but just kind of think through. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to do things the way they've always been done. Like, I got to give them a mug, or I've got to do this, or I got to do that. I don't know. Just find something that they can carry while they're carrying all their kids and all that stuff out to the car. That helps them to kind of remember the church and remember, hopefully, the hospitality you've offered them.
Yeah, if you have their email address, you can follow up with them on Monday. Make it automated. Remember, automation trumps determination.
Yeah, so this is after they leave.
Yeah, after they leave, pastors, you don't have to be the one following up with everybody. It can be automated. You can have staff do it. You can have volunteers do it. But make sure it gets done. And then you can use services like Text in Church. I think Text in Church is a great service that utilizes texting, connecting with guests and the people in your church. So that's a tool that you can utilize. And I think it's a very reasonable service for you to invest into that experience for guests, because if you're able to follow up with them and engage with them using a tool like Text in Church, they're going to come back, right? And there's always going to be a certain percentage of guests that come back, and then that stay, then that get engaged, then they get in the small groups, then they volunteer, then they're tithers. So all of that, at the top of your funnel, so to speak, is that guest experience. So you want to invest into that guest experience a lot so that you have returning guests.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, they choose a church based on a lot of different factors, but one of those factors is the pastor. What type of individual is the pastor? Are they prideful? Are they humble? Do they feel like they can talk to us at our level? So I think probably when you make that first contact, you might even give them an option to talk to you. You could use like TidyCal or Calendly and be like, hey, I try to keep my schedule open a few times a week for, if anybody guests want to talk to me. So feel free to schedule something and we'll get a call or a Zoom call. And it might just be good for pastors just to talk, to talk to your guests. Now, if you have thousands and thousands of people at your church, you might have to push that out to other pastors as well, kind of divide it up. But for most of us in our churches, we have, an hour or two a week where we can dedicate some time to that.
Yeah. So I think I go back to this main point as the last point. Put yourself in the mode of I'm a guest and try to view everything at your church. From the moment that you drive into the parking lot to you walk through the doors to, you walk into the sanctuary, you're sitting in service, you're listening to the sermon, you're engaging with different people, volunteers. Try to view it through the lens of a guest, and you'll see some opportunities, some things that you can do to improve that experience for them, so that it adds clarity to their experience and to their visit. I think every church in America really could, and beyond, right? Could, if you just did this exercise a few times a year, there's some opportunities for growth for everybody, no matter what size your church is.
Yeah, and my takeaway would be maybe learn this by visiting another church, and maybe even visiting a church that's different from you. So if you're part of a denomination, maybe visit a church outside your denomination so that it is a little bit more unfamiliar than what you're used to, and just think through that feeling and what you were looking for and what you needed, and then kind of go back to your church with fresh eyes and say, okay, we could do some things a little bit different.
No. Well, that's our episode for today. Hello, church. It's all about the guests today, and we hope that you have enjoyed this episode. And we would love to hear from you. Put a comment. What are some of the things that your church has done and you've implemented to reach out to first-time guests at your church? I would love to hear from you if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on iTunes, just leave us a 5-star review and then tell us in the comments what you did, right?
Yes, make sure you do that. We'd love to get your feedback. And then too, I think there are going to be other pastors who are listening to this, watching this, that would love to hear your feedback as well. Would help them. So we'll be back next week. We're going to be talking about how we address the unchurched in our church services. So if you're thinking through, like, there are people that come to church, they're guests, they don't go to church, and it doesn't feel like we're connecting. Maybe this next episode 7 coming out here soon, will be some help for you.